in the Woodhaven area of Queens, a resident called in a report he just watched a guy climb through his neighbor's window. John and Frank, two officers, rolled up to find the man still wandering the street, a 6'4", nearly 200-pound man. But when they went to question him, as they were about to do so, the man pulled a .22 revolver from his hip holster and fired straight at John. Fortunately, the gun misfired. Before the man could fire again, John and Frank immediately apprehended him. While examining the man's belongings, they found a stolen driver's license, attempted murder of a police officer, burglary, illegal weapons possession, 3 felonies that should have landed the man in a cell awaiting trial. But the court decided he wasn't mentally competent to stand trial and shipped him off to a psychiatric hospital instead. By January 1972, the hospital signed his release papers. The doctor who put his name on that document had zero clue that this Joseph Baldi character was still facing an attempted murder charge. Later, his case would be lumped together with 2 other serial killings, the Charles Yokel and Ricardo Caputo murders, to form one of the most infamous monuments to systemic failure in criminal justice history. January 16, 1941, Joseph was born in Richmond Hill, Queens, one of those working-class Italian neighborhoods. Not much is known about his early life, and word is he was always a loner, never really ran with the other kids, and had sticky fingers from the get-go, breaking into houses like it was a hobby. Later, at 21, his family finally threw up their hands and had him committed to Creedmoor State Hospital. They claimed he was getting stranger by the day, swinging between violent rages and these eerie silences, like there were several different people living inside him. During his 5-year stay at Creedmoor, Joseph learned some carpentry, got zapped with electroshock therapy, and swallowed enough psychiatric meds to sedate a horse. By 1967, they discharged him at age 26. On paper, he was a success story, a cured mental patient, a working man with a trade. But those treatment records? His actual mental state when they pushed him out the door? Nobody really knows. The next 3 years, Joseph didn't exactly settle into some quiet, normal life. Instead, he was right back on the streets of Queens, doing what he knew best, breaking into homes, stealing, being a parasite. That is, until Areti Kallermanis crossed his path. She was 23, a mother of 3, and she would become the first notch on Joseph's killing belt. Her death also marked the beginning of something far worse, the reign of terror that would earn him the name the Queen's Creeper. September 19, 1970. Areti and her family were riding high on that warm buzz of reunion. She and her husband had brought their 3 little kids up from Toronto to visit her parents-in-law, spend a cozy weekend together. In the nighttime, the kids were asleep in their rooms. Areti was probably lying there thinking about breakfast the next morning. But at around 4 in the morning, a tall man climbed through her window. He was Joseph, a guy with over a decade of burglary under his belt, slipping inside like he owned the place. And this wasn't new for him. For months, he'd been perfecting this nocturnal routine. Find an easy mark, grab the jewelry and cash, get out. But this time, things went differently. Areti woke to the faint sound, maybe a footstep, maybe a window sliding. She got up to check, and there he was, Joseph, knife in hand, standing in her bedroom. According to the investigation, the moment they locked eyes, he didn't hesitate. He slashed her throat deep, brutal, meant to silence her before she could scream. But Areti didn't drop. Survival instinct kicked in. She staggered through the living room, pushed open the bedroom door, and with whatever life she had left, she warned her husband. She died later at the hospital, and Joseph, long gone by then. At first, police treated it as a burglary gone wrong. Jewelry and cash were missing, so it looked like a theft that spiraled. But who was the killer? What was the real motive? Those questions got stuffed into a filing cabinet somewhere in Queens and left to gather dust for nearly 2 years. Because Areti and Joseph had no connection whatsoever. She wasn't targeted, she was just available. A random window in his nightly hunting pattern. For the next 18 months, Joseph prowled between Richmond Hill and Woodhaven, cruising those bottom-rung apartment buildings. Open windows, unlocked back doors, they might as well have had welcome mats out. He attacked 4 more women during that stretch, and the police, they filed those cases as routine burglaries and assaults. In the early hours of September 5, 1971, a resident of Woodhaven reported seeing a man climbing through a neighbor's window. Officers John and Frank rolled up quick and started sweeping the area. Didn't take long, they caught up with Joseph and went to question him. As they were about to do so, Joseph pulled a .22 revolver from his hip holster and attempted to shoot John, but the gun misfired. Then, John and Frank rushed him before he could squeeze off another round. Later, they booked him: attempted murder of a police officer, burglary, theft, illegal weapons possession. But, given his psychiatric history, the court ruled him unfit to stand trial and shipped him off to the Mid-Hudson Psychiatric Hospital in Beacon for forced treatment and observation, waiting for the legal process to catch up. On November 30th, Joseph got transferred to Creedmoor State Hospital back in Queens. Critical move, and nobody, not a single soul, bothered to tell the prosecutor's office. So when the grand jury formally indicted him in December 1971, the DA's office had no idea where the hell he was. Then, on January 21st, 1972, just over a month later, Creedmoor rubber-stamped his discharge. They were completely in the dark that their cured patient was facing multiple felony charges. Less than 2 months of freedom, Joseph was already back at it. March 18th, Jamaica. He pried open a ground floor window and slipped into the bedroom of a girl named Camille, 17 years old, intellectually disabled, living with her parents. She was asleep, and he killed her right there. By the time her parents found her, Joseph was long gone, just Camille's body left behind. On April 13th, he broke into the apartment of Clara, a 21-year-old engaged to an officer. She was living with 3 family members, but she was alone in bed when Joseph crept in. He stabbed her from behind 4 times, back and neck. Then he ripped off her bra and panties and tore them to shreds. This wasn't sexual assault, this was ritual. June 17th, he struck again near his boarding house in Jamaica. 15-year-old Deborah became his target. He climbed through an open window and plunged a knife into her chest. The pain woke her. She stumbled into her parents' bedroom, told them she'd been stabbed, but she bled out before help could arrive. Several days after Deborah's murder, several of her classmates walked into the precinct. They'd been followed by a tall, thin man with dark hair, and his description matched every other victim's account. On June 21st, Queens homicide detectives Donald and Michael acted on the tip. They spotted a man matching the suspect's description on the street and pulled him over. It was Joseph. He agreed to come downtown, and in the squad car, he said he admitted he might have hurt Deborah. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered the real kicker. This was the same Joseph who'd shot at an officer in 1971, the guy whose gun misfired and saved that officer's life. In the interrogation room, Joseph kept talking. He named 3 more murders: Areti, Camille, Clara. Then, the DA's office finally had him on 4 killings. That 1971 shooting became their wedge. They decided to prosecute that case first. Attempted murder carried less weight than a serial murder rap, but it was enough to lock this monster up immediately while they built the bigger case. In court, Joseph's attorney Sidney went straight for the insanity defense: schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder, arguing Joseph shouldn't be held responsible for any of it. The prosecution countered with Dr. Daniel, then director of the Kings County Hospital's psychiatric unit. This guy knew his business. After extensive evaluation, he took the stand and said, when Joseph pulled that trigger, his mind was crystal clear. He knew exactly what he was doing. 8 days of trial, and the jury saw through the insanity plea. They convicted him of attempted murder, 25 years. But the real fight was just getting started. In order to keep the trial from drowning in psychiatric testimony, both sides cut a deal: no showing the jury those tapes of Joseph in some dissociative fog reenacting the murders. Instead, the prosecution played a 45-minute recording where Joseph's voice was calm, clear, and damning. 4 confessions, straight from his own mouth. However, the chief judge of the New York Supreme Court tossed the charges for Areti, Camille, and Clara, some technical garbage about proxy authority. The DA fought to appeal, but after that, no public record of what happened next. As for that confession tape, Joseph later took the stand and flat out denied it, said he had zero memory of ever saying those things. His attorney Sidney immediately wheeled in psychiatrists and hospital administrators, waving around records of mental instability, trying to paint his client as permanently unhinged. But the Chief Justice looked at the whole picture and wasn't buying it. Joseph was sane when he killed Deborah. Guilty of second-degree murder, 25 to life sentence to be served at Sing Sing. The years that followed were a parade of appeals, mental incompetence claims, procedural errors, every angle Joseph's lawyers could dream up, all rejected. On October 17, 2009, the man Queens residents had learned to fear as the Queens Creeper died in his cell at Sing Sing. The thing that truly haunts about Joseph's case, not the killings themselves, but Creedmoor State Hospital's decision to release him as a model patient. When that news broke, it detonated across New York City, and the media had just started connecting the dots with two eerily similar cases that had unfolded around the same time. In 1971, Charles Yokel walked out of psychiatric care and promptly murdered a dance student. Then between 1973 and 1974, Ricardo Caputo got his own discharge papers from a mental hospital and went on to butcher 4 more women. All 3 men had been stamped model patient or fit for discharge. All 3 were released back into society, and all 3 immediately restarted their criminal activities.